The following program contains mature themes, nudity, coarse language, and explicit discussions on sexuality. Viewer discretion is advised.
For 30 years, we were the voice that had not been heard in the abortion debate. But we are silent no more. Abortion hurts women.
It's not whether abortion is legal or illegal. We want to make abortion unthinkable in this nation.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Women are silenced right now. They are silenced by a culture that is allowing these zealous, anti-choice, anti-woman groups to heap shame upon them so wrongly, so unfairly. I believe that our stories are our power. Our stories are our truth. And we must not let those who oppose a woman's most fundamental human right to make her own childbearing decisions, to silence us. We need to speak up and speak out.
I was in second year university when I found myself pregnant. It was kind of a very intense time of life for me. My father had passed away a few months prior, and I was trying to get through school and handle a lot of stress and sort of emotional trauma from the death of my father, and ended up having a one-night stand with someone that I wasn't particularly close to. When we were intimate, we'd used a condom. But we were both quite drunk, so not sure how that worked out. And then I took the emergency contraceptive pill the next day. But for some reason, I was in the 6% that didn't work for some reason. And I ended up finding out later that I was pregnant. And for me, the decision was to terminate the pregnancy. Being 21 and not finish my university education, I felt that I needed to continue with school and that it wasn't the right time and that I was in no sort of emotional or mental or physical state to be having a family. And still to this day feel really good about it. Like I know it was the right thing for me to do and I don't feel any guilt about it. I don't have any regrets because I know that if I'm meant to bring a child into the world, I'll do it when I'm ready.
I had abortion when I was 18. It was an abusive relationship, and the guy was 26 years old and very controlling and manipulative, and I ended up getting pregnant not by my own will. So I chose to have the abortion and leave him and get a restraining order, all as a way to sever the relationship. So I knew I also wanted to go to college, and I wasn't in the emotional state to raise a child at that time. So that was very positive. Ending to that phase of my life, and it actually gave me opportunities that I would have never had. My parents were totally supportive, and I had no regret ever at all. It was just a complete relief to have it.
When I was about 29 or 30, I'd been in a relationship. It was a very turbulent and turmoil-filled one, and something was going on. My period was late and kind of felt a little odd. The shock and the gravity of that sentence, "You're pregnant," kind of made me numb at first. And I was just filled with anxiety. I didn't know what to do. I had real issues with myself. Would I be a good parent? Would I parent like my parents parent? Would I beat them? Would I do all the other terrible things that came along with that? Did I want this person to be my child's father. And after some very thoughtful, careful, and deep contemplation, I decided that the abortion was the best thing for everybody. I don't regret my abortion at all. As a matter of fact, that is one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. It awakened in me a very passionate feeling towards choice.
Basically, I got pregnant just before my 14th birthday, which was the first time I ever had sex. And it was pretty clear to me that I wasn't ready to have a baby. I was going to 11th grade, and I was not prepared. And I wanted to go to university and do things with my life. So when the nurse told me that I was pregnant, she asked me what I wanted to do, and I instantly said that I knew I wanted to have an abortion. So 4 days later, there was a cancellation, and I was able to go to the hospital. And when I woke up, I felt wonderful. I felt relieved. I felt freed. I felt like someone had just let me out of prison, and I could finally breathe the air, like my life had been saved.
I had 2 abortions when I was in my 20s. Both times I had them because of a strong feeling that I wasn't emotionally or sort of developmentally myself ready to be a parent, that I was still too much of a child in some ways. And I also had fairly definite career ambitions and felt that if I had had a child then, I would not have been able to finish the training and have the stability and economic self-sufficiency that I now have. When I became pregnant in my 30s, it wasn't just acceptance of motherhood, it was actively, seeking it out. And I was 39 and pregnant with my second child when I began training to do abortions. Although I was afraid to do it when it was still illegal. So I wasn't one of those who totally stuck my neck out at the beginning, but I was one of the early ones to train when it was legal. It seems clear from both the academic research and from the day-to-day experience of myself and other abortion providers that the major emotional reaction women have to an abortion is relief. Relief that it's over, that the decision is done, that the abortion went well and they're still okay, and that bad things didn't happen the way they might have been told scare stories to make them not want to have the abortion.
We know by these voices of experience that there are negative consequences, yes. Both physical, psychological, emotional, and yes, spiritual. Some women, their abortion will haunt them for 10, 15, 20, 30 years.
27 years ago, I had an abortion. I had it after I was married and I had 2 children, and I had suffered with postpartum depression. And my husband said that he would leave me if I had the baby. At the time when my baby would have been born, my husband died. And so I was alone with the children anyway. I still regret my abortion. I still suffer because of it. I'm here as a vehicle to help other women who have suffered because of an abortion.
The kinds of things that are the most likely to cause the woman trouble afterwards are ambivalence about the decision to have the abortion. Having an abortion because you're pressured by someone outside of yourself to have it, as opposed to because that's really what you think is the right thing to do. And of course the religious right or the anti-abortion movement generally needs to emphasize more and more directly to women the problems that they think the women will have if they go through with abortion.
The purpose of the campaign, first of all, is to reach out to women who we know are still locked in that sinful, shameful sin of abortion. The idea is that it's not whether abortion is legal or illegal, but it's to make abortion an unthinkable choice for any woman in an unplanned pregnancy. Because if you listen to the voices of experience trumps theory all the time.
If you can't make it illegal, if you can't block access to it, then the only other way to stop it is to try and talk women out of it on the grounds that it will be ultimately harmful for them to have the abortions.
I remember walking out of the operating room in my soiled scrub suit, and I got down on my knees and looked up at her and said, "I'm sorry, but we did all we could."
The following program contains mature themes, nudity, coarse language, and explicit discussions on sexuality. Viewer discretion is advised.
I grew up in small towns in Texas in the 1950s, where the notion of women in the culture was very limited. In 1957, if a girl became pregnant, she generally was forced to get married. And if she didn't get married, she was probably forced to go away, put the child up for adoption. And if neither of those occurred, then she had a back alley abortion. So none of those options was a happy option. But that was the lot of women in the mid-1950s.
I think I'm either the oldest or the second oldest abortion provider who's a member of the National Abortion Federation. When I started medical school, I, for the first time, saw women dying, many women dying, from the consequences of induced abortion. And I found the experience terrifying. And at the same time, I began to wonder why abortion wasn't legal. But it really was not something that you could even discuss. In 1964, I was an attending at a large city hospital in New York City. A young woman was admitted to the hospital who we later discovered, because she refused to tell us the truth, that she'd had an induced abortion, and she had a overwhelming infection. We decided we had no choice but to go ahead and operate on her and probably try to remove the uterus, which we believed to be the source of the infection at that point. We got the abdomen open, we started the hysterectomy, and the anesthesiologist said, stop. She had a cardiac arrest. We both used internal as well as external massage in an attempt to resuscitate her. And after about a half an hour, we just had to give up. And I remember walking out of the operating room in my soiled scrub suit into the family waiting room where the mother and father and brother were waiting, and I walked in and I got down on my knees and put my hands on the mother's knees and looked up at her and said, I'm sorry, but we did all we could. And everybody started to cry, and so did I. That night, when I finally got home, I said to myself, this has got to stop. I learned to do abortions in a motel room that was outfitted as a little operating room. And that spring, we began to put together the first abortion clinic, which was going to open the first week in July of 1970. And the rest is history. The number of pregnancies that were terminated surgically went up like this. The number of deaths due to infection went straight down. The number of deaths due to hemorrhage in New York State went straight down. So what you right away could see vividly, that in the state of New York, the improvement in women's health care was extraordinarily dramatic. And I think it fueled the pro-choice movement.
Good evening. In a landmark ruling, the Supreme Court today legalized abortions.
And here I am now, an old man, and people portray those who are opposed to abortion as inducing death. In point of fact, we save families and we save women's lives. And we can prove it. Once you make abortions illegal, women die. Adult women die. It's based on my personal experience and knowledge as a physician who grew up at a time when abortions were illegal, and I have been part of the transition. I played a role in making abortion available to women in this country.
Good evening. Dr. Henry Morgentaler says he is filled with joy. The Supreme Court of Canada has struck down the country's abortion law, calling it unconstitutional.
Justice for the women of Canada in this particular era has finally arrived.
When a woman comes to me for an abortion, I try and adopt a view of her fetus that's compatible with hers. I mean, there are women who have a lot more feeling about their fetuses than I had about mine, and I wouldn't ever try to talk a woman out of that feeling. I would never argue with someone who feels the fetus has value. What I would argue with is someone who feels that the fetus has more value than the woman. That whatever value or rights or consideration we want to give to a fetus, it can't be so great that we are willing to violate those same rights of the woman in order to enforce the fetal rights.
I was a teen mom myself, and I had my 3 children by shortly after my 20th birthday. And then for some reason I woke up and had this sort of realization that there is a bigger world that I could be participating in. Now, what enabled me to start to college when my youngest was 4 months old is that the birth control pill had come into my life. It enabled me then to plan my life in general. Because when a woman can control her fertility, when a woman can make those decisions about whether and when she's going to have children, then she has the ability to determine the rest of her life. For most of human history, women have pretty much been servants to their biology. If you don't have access to reproductive rights and health care, whether it's contraception or abortion, then you cannot ever say that you are free. That's why I did what I did for 30 years. So every woman can have the blessings of motherhood and freedom, because there's nothing more wonderful than to become a parent when you are ready to, when you want to receive that child with great joy. The Christian right or theological, zealous right, what you find is it's about a different worldview about the nature and purpose of human sexuality, and whether human sexuality is in and of itself a good thing or whether it is based in sin. And that actually leads you, when you pull back the next layer of the onion, to the worldview about women, and whether women should have an equal place in the world, whether women should have the power. So you peel back the next layer of the onion and you find out it's ultimately really about power. It's about who has the power and control over sexuality, reproduction, and therefore women.
They have this great thing about the fetus. They have this great thing about let the child live, let the baby live. But notice this, when the child gets here, then they abort the child.
The following program contains mature themes, nudity, coarse language, and explicit discussions on sexuality. Viewer discretion is advised.
We are pro-choice because of our religion. We are pro-choice because of our religion.
When I first came to the movement, I was concerned because I said, my God, the opposition has co-opted the language. Think about it. Pro-life. What are we? Pro-choice. Well, I'm pro-life. Coming out of my tradition in the black community, we have a great sense of the sacredness of life. But I tell you, you have to define what life is. No one can say life begins at conception. They have this great thing about life. They have this great thing about the fetus. They have this great thing about let the child live, let the baby live. But notice this, they wait until the child gets here. Term, full term. When the child gets here, then they abort the child. Now, how do they abort the child? Through lack of education, lack of health care, lack of housing, lack of opportunity. I see children every day I can drive through Southeast Washington right today and see children, for all practical purposes, have been aborted. They're living, but they're aborted. 70% of the poverty in the black community can be traced to teen pregnancy. So we're trying to break that cycle, and the way you break it is to open up the doors and talk about responsible sexuality, helping young people to have a life. When we talk about life and culture of life, I want them to have a culture of life after they get here. To have a child is a sacred choice. But most people don't realize to make the decision not to have a child can be a sacred choice.
Being a parent is such a serious thing to me because I was in the system. I'm not somebody who's speaking from no experience. I was in and out of foster care. I was in and out of an abusive alcoholic home. So did I want to put my kid through that? No. You know, if I'm not in a position to be a good parent or think that I can be, no one else has the right to tell me, oh no, you'll be fine. My demons run deeper than that. Yeah, life is sacred, but while that fetus is in my body, it belongs to me. And until I make the choice to be a parent and that I can deliver the level of parenthood that I think a child deserves, then I get to make that decision.
I certainly thought about what it meant for me to be, you know, stopping the possibility of me bringing a life into the world. And sometimes I'll sit back and say, I would have a 5-year-old right now. You know, I believe in family values. Certainly not conservative ones, but I do think there is strength in that kind of unit. So I knew that, you know, that was not the right age for me. I was in no sort of emotional state to be a good mother, a strong mother.
I look back now and I think it might have been the pivotal moment of my life. I think that it made me very independent at a pretty young age and made me feel like I really had some control over my life. I went to university and I got involved in pro-choice activism because I just could relate. And from there, I realized that I needed to be a doctor. And one of the main things I want to do as a doctor is I certainly want to be an abortion provider.
I think it just takes a few brave women to stand up, tell their stories, speak out. And you know, actually, if we don't tell our story, we are doing a great, great disservice to our own children.
Women who have abortions need to realize that they're not alone and that it doesn't reflect badly upon them at all. Anybody can fall victim to an unplanned pregnancy, and don't let anybody judge you, and don't let anybody try to put you down.
I mean, we shouldn't celebrate, you know, necessarily the loss of the potential of life, but we can celebrate a woman's decision to do something about her life and to have the sort of independence and the autonomy to take control. I think that's something to be celebrated.
Every mother, a willing mother, every child, a wanted child. And that's what being pro-choice means to me, is that you are pro-family, you are pro-woman, you are pro-life.